All right, guys, here we go again. Welcome back. Daniel chapter 5, lecture number 1. Obviously, we're shifting from chapter 4 to chapter 5. In chapter 4, we were finishing up the life of Nebuchadnezzar. And right off the bat, in Daniel chapter 5, verse 1, we are introduced to King Belshazzar. So we have a new king, which means we have a new crown, right? Now, there would have been some people at some point who questioned the credibility of the book of Daniel just based on this chronological timeline. The fact that we go from Nebuchadnezzar to King Belshazzar, some people would have said, whoa, time out. The Bible is inaccurate because that's not the proper progression. And truthfully, they were right. But then that information got validated when there was an archaeological find made, and that archaeological find was the Nabonidus cylinder. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about that at a later time. But basically, what that archaeological find did, the Nabonidus cylinder, it linked the king, the lineage from Nebuchadnezzar down through Belshazzar. And so it validated the authenticity of Scripture, all right? So what that means is basically this. Nebuchadnezzar dies in 562 BC, and then his son, Amel-Marduk, becomes king. Now, Amel-Marduk, Nebuchadnezzar's son, he reigns for all of 2 years before he is assassinated in 560 BC. The next king after Amel-Marduk was this guy named Neriglissar. Now, Neriglissar is Amel-Marduk's brother-in-law, and he reigned for all of 6 years before he was killed in battle. After Neriglissar comes Labashi-Marduk. Now, Labashi-Marduk is Neriglissar's son, and he obviously then becomes king as well. However, his reign lasts all of 9 months before he is killed in a military coup, right? So there's some conspirators who want to overthrow Labashi-Marduk, and they do so. They overthrow the crown, and they beat Labashi-Marduk to death. So his reign lasts all of 9 months. And when that happens, those who led the military coup, the conspirators, they appointed one of their own, and they appointed Nabonidus. So in 556, Nabonidus becomes the next appointed king of Babylon. However, he is not of the royal bloodline. So what does he do? He marries into the bloodline by marrying one of Nebuchadnezzar's ex-wives or one of Nebuchadnezzar's daughters. We're not sure if it's an ex-wife, we're not sure if it's a daughter, but what we do know is that Nabonidus marries into the bloodline of Nebuchadnezzar. And his wife already has a son. And what is her son's name? Belshazzar. So Nabonidus becomes Belshazzar's stepdad. So for 9 years, we have this crazy back and forth family tree. We've got all kinds of, wars and battles and kings dying and the next guy being appointed. And at the end of this time, at the end of 9 years, Nabonidus and Belshazzar, they are co-regents of Babylon. In other words, they share the responsibility of being king of Babylon. Why? Because Nabonidus is not of the royal bloodline and Belshazzar is. But then, King Cyrus is on the move. You remember the second section of the statue that Nebuchadnezzar dreamed of back in chapter 2? The Medes and the Persians? Well, King Cyrus is the king of the Persians. So King Cyrus of Persia is on the move, and he takes Nabonidus into captivity, and that is where Nabonidus dies. And when Nabonidus dies, Belshazzar becomes the king of Babylon. When he becomes king of Babylon, he basically has the entire kingdom handed to him. He hasn't worked for any of this. He hasn't really fought in any of the battles. Basically, everything he has done, all of his popularity, all of his wealth, all of his success, all of his significance has been handed to him. And that's the kind of personality that we see in chapter 5 through Belshazzar. Okay, so some other information for you by way of timeline on where we are in chapter 5. King Belshazzar, at the beginning of this chapter, is in his mid to late 30s, approximately 36 years of age. Nebuchadnezzar has been dead for about 26 years. Daniel, at this point, is in his mid to late 80s. And as we just mentioned, King Cyrus of Persia is on the move. So, spoiler alert, you remember the golden head of Babylon in Nebuchadnezzar's dream in chapter 2? Well, at the end of this chapter, the golden head and the Persians take over.